Let's open it up to questions. I know we're tired, but I think we've got some questions here at the front, so let's start. Give him the mic.
You made me laugh when you were talking about the safety of paramedics. It's in 1978, Dan O'Bannon, I think, Return of the Night of the Living Dead, the one that we get, the one where the zombies are yelling brains. One of the first speaking roles of the zombie is they get on the radio for the car and they send more paramedics. They made you famous.
Same kind of question for both of you, different, Blake and Bruce and Xana. You mentioned the conditions, but I'm curious about the personalities of the people, particularly reporters in general, journalists in general, actual real ones, not someone like me who would take a video cam and try to, make a news media, and medical personnel. They tend to have kind of that heroic personality anyway. And like in journalists, the ones I've known, they tend to be risk takers, that whole to get the story, to get it out there, and also be socially conscious. So in a lot of ways, you talked about the liability for infection and security. What's the personality play to putting themselves in danger to actually help the public? And same question to you, it's the same idea. You're talking medical personnel. You have limited resources. You're talking bringing in other people who are untrained and kind of adding to the pile. But again, it's a heroic element. They're the ones most likely to go out of their way to put themselves in danger to help. So just in curiosity, I'm curious on both of your thoughts around that.
Well, yeah, there's a saying that is often applied to emergency personnel that, when everyone's running away from, a fire or a crime or something, they're the ones that run toward it, right? And they are to be commended for that. In a way, journalists are like that too, right? In order to get the story, you got to go get it. That's your job, to get there as soon as possible. And it's really quite exciting, right? Chris has done this, hearing something on, scanners have changed too. It's all digital and you can't listen like back in the old days when you'd hear something, on an analog scanner. But, to get to whatever it is you're going to get to is a rush. And without a doubt, a lot of journalists are adrenaline junkies. And I talked about these, journalists getting their heads cut off. And that's the absolute truth. A lot of them are inexperienced, rookies trying to make a name for themselves, and they go out into these, very dangerous places quite naively because they're trying to make a name for themselves, for one thing. But it's also part of the thrill. I watched recently the WTF, the movie about Afghanistan, and with Tina Fey, which is based on a true story. Now I have done a wee bit of foreign work, but nothing like that. But I don't doubt that that's really a grain of truth. The way they party, they're hard living, they're driven, they go after that kind of stuff. So yeah, they may, run headlong into the crisis that is going to certainly cost them their lives. Yeah.
Certainly, I would agree. It's interesting. Just listening to the discussion. So I just completed my 40th year and I still haven't figured it out yet. Our personality traits, the people that we want to attract to our service, absolutely, much the same as the discussion thus far, that we want them to have those personality traits, so they will run in. But it also organizationally causes us the most consternation, I guess, because, they, because of that A-type personality, they challenge more each other, like a close-knit family. They challenge the leadership. They challenge the decision makers. So, one comes with the other. I think the part that is most difficult relative to today's discussion, when I look at what's going on with what I consider our partners, the lack of resources has had a horrific impact, not just in terms of that day-to-day reporting. But when I came into the business many, many years ago, there were enough resources, enough people, that you actually got to build relationships, because that's how we work best, is when you have a relationship. But when you never see the same person twice, right, whether it's one of our responder partners or in the case of the media, you rarely see the same reporter twice covering an issue. How do you possibly establish trust? How do you possibly build that relationship that's necessary so that when the chips are down, you automatically think about using one of your partners to help you with the solution? And that's the most negative impact, I think.
Well, I would add to that, yeah, beats have almost entirely disappeared in at least journalism in a city this size. We have a great court reporter in the city, for example, who is still dedicated to the crime beat, court beat. A couple of still do crime, and they're the Windsor Star. The radio and TV, they don't have beats anymore. Not only do you lose those relationships, though, you lose the specialization. So somebody who's actually gets to know you and your people and has the expertise to cover something, not to jump to the sensational, which journalists are often accused of doing, just to say, no, it's all right. Because that could be just as dangerous, too, I suppose, the hysteria, not just as, but there's danger in the hysteria that journalists can promote as well, too. So, yeah, I would concur. Yeah.
Going back to the heroic element, I think that gets beaten out of people really quickly, because you're either going to get hurt, you're going to get your partner hurt, or you're going to die. So there's definitely that, I can help in this emergency situation, but you're also, if you're always, running towards that crisis, something bad is going to happen to you if you don't take a step back and make sure you're safe first. And there's a difference between running into a crisis unprepared, taking a step back, realizing what you can do to keep yourself safe, and then running in.
Chief, recently, I think it was like 5 years ago, the federal government released their zombie plan 10 years ago.
Right.
Is the city of Windsor going to be working on one, making, Plan 20 number 6 there?
Well, you never know. After today, I'm going to certainly be bringing back what I've learned and apply it to the 26th plan. Absolutely.
He's one of your new boys. I heard you talking.
Do we have any other burning questions? Oh, yeah, we got one up there.
He's one of my students.
For emergency response in particular, how long, in the case of like a zombie apocalypse or something similar, would they be responsible to like hold their ground at their position, opposed to like abandoning their job and protecting themselves and their family?
You want to go first?
Sure. I think it's about doing the most good for the most people. So it would be kind of looking at what you have to go home to versus staying on the job. There are definitely people that would be there right till the end, going down with the ship. And there are people who would, jump immediately, I've got a new baby at home, I'm out of here.
Yeah, that's fair. When we hire new staff, for example, that's when what I call their learning begins, and it never ends. And the very first thing I talk to them about, to a new employee, is what I call the chief's bullseye. So if you think of a dartboard, the very center of the dartboard is the most important part. It's worth the most points and those kinds of things. So that's the most important part of the chief's bullseye. And that very first part I talk to them about is safety, their safety, and their performance. And that comes first, before the customer, which is the second part of the chief's bullseye. Because if they don't consider their own safety first, then they're not going to be there to help the customer. So our organization is very focused on you hold the line until it's not possible relative to your own safety. And I mean, it's all very relative to you risk nothing to save nothing, and you risk an awful lot to save a lot, in this case a life, as compared to a building. If we're talking in my business about fires, for example, I don't care, quite frankly, if the building goes to the ground, but I very much care if we left someone in there who then perishes as a result. So I don't know if that helps you with our perspective. Relative to the influence of family, that's why that's why we call ourselves a family. And when staff join us, we welcome every single member of their family to our family, because we too are concerned about their family. Because if their family isn't safe, then their mind isn't going to be on their job. And so part of our role is making sure that they have the means by which to ensure their family is safe.
I just thought there should be a nerd component here. Back in the 80s, I ended up getting interested in amateur ham. I got my ticket about, was it Lydia, 04, 01, 2, something like that. And back in the 80s and 90s, it was a really big deal for emergency services to use amateur ham radio, all the shortwave, especially because it wasn't all digitized at that point. It was very limited. And I remember we lived in the Kootenays, and there was the forest fires back in the 80s, and that was massive coordination with fire services, the forestry service, and all that. It was mostly coordinated by the amateur hams in the area. Now that it's all digitized and it's gone, I've forgotten the term. What is the radio to computer to radio? There's that whole thing going on now, and it's all based on the IT stuff now. So I know there's still people doing radio to radio. Do you rely on the amateur ham still for emergency services in these days?
Certainly here in the city of Windsor, we work with local ham radio operators on a regular basis. We provide facilities for them in cases of emergency. But I think technology has sort of pushed a lot of organizations away from them. Not because they're not helpful in other communities, but I think the reliability of the equipment today is so much better that I think in some cases organizations think that they can do without them. We don't think that, but there are those organizations who do.
Transceiver in my basement if you ever need it.
Awesome, awesome.
And that concludes the panels. Tonight there's going to be a zombie walk, so get your gear on and get ready to scare the city of Windsor.
While we still have your attention, we'd like to thank you for watching.
I'm Aria Carter.
And I'm Taylor Westenberg, and this has been the 30 News, bringing you live coverage of the Zombie Apocalypse Conference.